Thank you all for joining in our conversation and walkthrough of Lotte Andersen's It's Not You, It's Me, It's Complicated, part of the special projects presented this year for NADA with Ginsberg Galleria. Lotte Andersen, a British artist currently living and working in Lima, Peru. Her body of work, which spans across video, sound, print, performance, writing, and collage, sees her navigate an oftentimes intimate, investigative, autobiographical narrative. Her works examine movement and its properties, the act of joy as a political statement of labor. Her first presentation in Lima with Ginsberg Galleria sees her in It's Not You, It's Me, It's Complicated, produced over the last 8 months spent in lockdown in Lima, as well as having to negate the political climate of Peru's most recent coup d'etat. For the 18th edition of NADA, the artist proposes a collection of works dealing with the weights of relics, considering the function of mementos through the use of emblematic triggers. Suspended in space, the works converge and act in unison to produce momentum. Generated by the viewer's own personal history, questioning and rejecting the manipulation of the aesthetics of nostalgic motifs. And then we also have Claudia Pareja, director of Ginsberg Galleria. Established in 2016, the mission of exhibiting Latin American artists in a context of critical dialogue and intellectual rigor. The program has been designed around the premises of conceptualism, research, and innovation, with a special interest in preserving and understanding regional differences. Inspired by the art's capacity of building bridges and shortening frontiers, Ginsberg aspires to be a platform where emerging and well-established artists can continue to create freely, broadening discourses and presenting innovative ideas. So now onto the actual exhibition. So when looking at the work, which I kind of feel like it actually is now within the exhibition space, there's so many layers within the work that I feel are so intuitive to a London aesthetic, but at the same time, a Lima aesthetic. So you can read it in so many different ways. I want to understand how being a Londoner who's now moved into Lima, how this has kind of created this multi-layer in your practice.
Hi, hello everyone. Thanks for tuning in. So it's funny you asked that. I was just speaking to a childhood friend of mine who I went to high school with. She started messaging me and she was going, Lottie, what's this? Lottie, what's that? And kind of about 20 minutes into the conversation, I said, I think sometimes maybe you've got to leave wherever you've come from to get a much clearer view of yourself. I think there's no possible way that I could have come to any of these conclusions had I remained in London. Which is where I'm born. And I think through the advent, I really took the time to kind of examine my past, examine my heritage, and explode those in a really kind of passionate and uncompromising way, and a way in which I feel like you can only do when you're in a new environment and around new people who have no preconception of you. I think just the type of person I am, I'm fascinated with like collections. I'm fascinated with like quite traditional motifs. And I think until this show, I had spent a lot of time using that interest and that research, I would say working against it. So pushing back, making new media work, rejecting my grandparents, my father, my auntie, my uncle, they're antique dealers. Really going for something brand spanking new, clean, plastic, kind of inhumane. I feel like on moving to Lima, I found myself really in touch again with a really personable humanity, the human hand, the hand of the maker. I found myself completely immersed in pre-Columbian ceramics, paintings from the Amazon basin. I traveled, visited Cusco, like absolutely extraordinary city in the sky. I visited the Nazca Lines, Paracas, the Amazon jungle, Madre de Dios. And I found myself really confronted with things that I think I could have quite easily avoided if I'd stayed in central London or going to like New York, Paris, Madrid. And I feel like that is really reflected in the types of materials, particularly in the textile works that are in the booth.
I think it's almost like stripping back from yourself in London to actually really understand the touch of the material again, would you say?
Completely.
Yeah. Because I mean, for example, when I look at, for example, the tapestry that you have hanging, you know, just seeing like the texture and the difference of material, there's like yourself in that. There's a certain like London kind of tailoring, but at the same time, there's the Peruvian artisanal craftsmanship as well.
Yes, and the history of textiles. I mean, I'm in Peru. It's like #1 in the world for cotton. It's #1 in the world for so many of these like gorgeous things that we have like pillaged, raped, and stolen. I'm of course not doing that. I'm just fascinated, celebrating it, trying to recontextualize it, maybe trying to like push it into like a kind of new aesthetic, but still in its hometown, and really celebrate the artisan here. And I found it an extremely humbling experience. I feel like I certainly learned more working in Lima than I have anywhere else.
Trying to understand basically how, for example, where the point of, let's say, not the point of interest, but rather where the highlighted elements are in how it would be produced in London to how it would be produced in Lima. What are the points of highlighting?
I mean, the first thing to always come back to, which what I said is the hand of the maker. I feel like in London, things kind of go through so many processes sometimes, or at least they were within my practice. They were going through so many different, I don't know, either like Xerox machines or editing suites or editors, that you really lost like the human hand, and which was something that I would spend a lot of time talking about, how to reinsert that human error back into these like quite robotic works. The thing for me was to collaborate with makers here. So I found myself really touching things for the first time myself, really quite inspired by them. I mean, you can't spend like 3 weeks in a metal workshop with like 6 blokes with like these big masks on and not be like, you know, I'm going to have a go, or how do I try and do this? I mean, I'm extremely accident prone, so I didn't touch any of the metal. But certainly I had a background in tailoring, hand sewing, tacking, embroidery. The baby girl standard, which is kind of center left in the presentation, hand stitched, hand embroidered. Really, I feel like with this project, like the devil is really in the detail. Like it's really great to zoom back and get this kind of overall impression, but I feel much more like I wanted people to invite people into the space to like look really, really very, very close to see, you know, the little girls, all the fingernails I had embroidered. The top little girl has baby pink nails. The bottom little girl has bright pillar box red. Even just in terms of the work, the nails, the acrylic nails, they're things that you really have to lean into as a maker and as a viewer. And I was really keen to try and pull that into every piece in there. Even the hooks, the hooks, the heart-shaped hooks that you can see on the floor, you kind of stand back and you first walk in and they're placed in this kind of, so they're placed directly in front of you, so you just see kind of long, thin stripes. And then as you move, the work starts to reveal itself. And then as you lean in closer, you see, again, the little dancing girl motif is seen on the little patitas, as we started calling them in the studio.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating also that you say that, you know, you have this, you're inviting the viewer in to take a closer look. And I think that's also, I mean, from also understanding your previous works, you're constantly, there's such a need for the interaction that the viewer participates in. You know, it isn't just about putting something up on the wall, it's about actually creating a safe space. And I think that's kind of what the diorama is doing. You're asking people, have people been going into the space? How have they been interacting with the work now?
They have. They have been walking into the space. The thing that's really wild about that is this. That's it. That expression, safe space. It has a completely different ring. I hadn't thought about it until you mentioned it. It has a completely different ring in 2020 than it did in 2019. It's almost like milk that's gone off and it's still in the fridge. Like, is anything a safe space anymore? I don't know. Am I even able to create a safe space anymore? I don't know. Am I even a safe space? I don't know. The thing
what
that
I've seen is,
yeah.
Well, a lot of people have been coming in, and at first they're like kind of reluctant because the floor is so, like, the color of the floor is like, am I going to stain it, you know? But then they kind of venture, because it's like, no, you have to go in, because of course, like, there are so many details in the pieces that you actually have to come, you know, close. And then people start getting into this like rhythm of the works and music, and it's a reference to something you can find in dance reggaeton, but like really, really dance. So they have these hooks on the floor, so you can like grab them off as like people start twerking and doing all those, you know, all kind of dances that I could never ever do. And we had a guy that came in today, and he was like, "Oh, are these like for that?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he started dancing. He actually got his cell phone, you know, got a song like Tusa, and he was like dancing to it. And I was like, and he's like, "I'm so happy I can see art again, like in 3D, and I can touch stuff." And I was like, "Well, you can't touch everything, but."
But it's funny you say that also about movement, because, you know, so much of the work is about negation, this movement. And, you know, even earlier on when we're talking about the work on the side, the portrait of the Queen in carriages, coachman rather, you know, that as well, when, you know, having to walk underneath the pillar and stuff like this, there is definitely this movement, this it's not performative, but there's definitely this, you feel safe enough to actually move into it, you know, and take a closer look.
That's what's really interesting, is that for Claudia's anecdote, which is completely wicked, I'm so happy that people want to touch things. I'm so happy that there's something in there that people like, you know, whether we can or not, but that Queen, she's dangerous. She's lethal. She comes in she's an interesting work. Like, the first thing to say is the name of the work is the Dick Jewell Standard. And I think she comes up at 8 foot tall when she's against the wall. And then there's 2 serigraphy print on textured plastic. The stainless steel 7-shaped rod standard pole that comes off her is extremely dangerous. It's welded at a completely impossible angle. When you stand straight in front of her, you kind of, I feel like she kind of throws you off, because there's no way, she defies gravity, essentially. She defies gravity. She stands tall, proud, above your head, kind of like a sickle, as if at any point she might decide to just whoop off with your head. But there's this kind of like regality, regalness. Maybe I'm losing my English now, but just for her, in her face, she's so calm, poised, proud. The image I recontextualized from an artist who I have greatly admired for so many years, called Dick Jewell, who's a British artist, mainly known for collage. So I spoke with Dick. Felt like it was a really important moment to bring that work up and out again. And with his blessing, he let me incorporate her. But it was funny because I was speaking a little bit about, again, her size with a friend, and how wonky and scary, but minimal and kind of received she is. and we were talking about chess. Everyone keeps watching this chess TV show. I forget its name. It's on maybe on Netflix or something.
The Queen's Gambit.
Right. So we were talking about the Queen, and I was talking with my partner, and I was talking about the Black Queen and how dangerous she was and how ferocious. He said, "But darling, look, like, don't you know, she, like, the Black Queen is always at, she's more vulnerable than the White Queen." And I was like, "Why?" And she goes, "Because white plays first." And despite having this ginormous structure that towers over all these works, essentially reigning and ruling all of these works, once she leaves the booth, I don't know if she's so lethal.
No, I think definitely the image is a massively lethal situation, because, I mean, for example, what does it mean to have a Black Queen in Britain? You know, like when we look at the uproar that having somebody in the royal family who was not white caused, I mean, there was, you know, all the racist true nature of people was coming out. And I think that also, you know, within a Peruvian context, that can be also read in a very similar way. You know, we have this idea that, you know, there is indigenous Peruvians and there's European Peruvians. And that in itself, the indigenous Peruvian is not as visual, as not as seen as the European Peruvian. So I think by all means to have a Black Queen speaks to those two narratives, you know?
I hope so. I hope so. I mean, I have the utmost respect for that work. That's why she's the biggest.
Yeah, for sure. And also, okay, so now I want to like talk about just the nails in the coffin. The nails in the coffin, mis uñas favoritas. Tell me about that. I mean, it's absolutely brilliant. I keep going back to it. My head is just like, oh my God, this is so brilliant. So you have the nails. How many are there in total?
So we've got 13.
Yeah.
Lucky number. Kidding. So there's 13 nails in a kind of wooden beveled Victoriana-esque display cabinet, glass, on black and red velvet in an oval, all laid out like a little sunshine. The nails were a great thing. I've always struggled to make small things. That's, I think, probably the first thing to say. And within this booth, you really have to get very close to see these. I've been thinking a lot about the hand of the maker, the hand of the artisan. I've been thinking a lot about Brexit. I left the UK in 2019 to come to Peru for the first time in March, not knowing that I would live here. Knowing that I really had to get the out of England. I couldn't handle it. The papers were just like you said, kind of all the tabloids, just like front covers of Brexit, Theresa May, Boris, them destroying Meghan Markle. It just didn't seem safe, to be completely frank. I feel like the moment I got here, like I was saying, I was suddenly confronted with how English I was, whilst also in a process of seriously rejecting everything that had to do with Crown Country, the passport, all of it. But there's something about being a Londoner that, and particularly those nails, nail art, like a really great friend of mine, Charmaine Reed, that she built her empire on them. I'm not someone who really ever has anything on their fingers other than rings, but I really, really always admired her, and I admired what she did for young women, you know, trying to empower themselves. And those young women I always really, really respected. I see that work as 13 tiny micro paintings, 13 tiny little masterpieces that you can adore and kind of be blown away by the intricacy of the mark making. And also the placement, you know, I put that queen right in front of those nails. I think that work is probably the closest thing to a self-portrait in the project. And it's funny because I almost created a Venus flytrap where, so as much as I was trying to like be this kind of vulnerable version, there's something in my unconscious that's like, no way, no one's getting too close. I'm proud of them, you know, like There's
I
a
mean, they're
Peruvian
also
flag.
behind this glass cabinet, you know?
Yeah, but they're just the emblem, the symbolism in them. That there's a rave smiley, there's a British flag like the Jerry Halliwell dress she wore at the Brit Awards. There's the Peruvian flag. There's the night sky. I was really struck driving through the desert through Nazca for like 2-3 days. I'm completely aghast by the sky in Cusco. You go, or like the Sacred Valley. It's extraordinary. I've never seen darkness till I went to the Amazon. I didn't know what that was. It's extraordinary. And also just the idea that these things that we overlook, you know, we carry these things every day. There's so many times, you know, I'm in a group socializing, and then there's some wicked girl walks up, and then you look down and she's got all of this knowledge, all of this expertise, all of this skill set, all 10 on her hands. Yeah.
But I think also, like, you know, the attention to detail of also having the niñas with the nails done in the tapestry as well. You know,
Yeah.
there's that playfulness within their dancing. It's super joyful, for sure.
Yeah.
Why did you use the girl motif? The girls, rather, because
yes,
it's two.
so the girls. So on driving, we were doing these before lockdown. Me and friends and my partner, we were doing various trips, really driving around Peru. It's an amazing place. It's pretty untapped. It's massive. You drive for an hour and you're in a different climate. You drive another hour, you're in a different landscape. It's really extraordinary. Even within the capital city, I sometimes find that like me and Claudia will be in different seasons. On either side of the city,
like right now.
exactly. Yeah. I'm like sweltering hot and like you might be chaotic, but these girls. So we were driving through a district called Chincha, which I think, if I understand correctly, was where the slave plantations were in Peru. And we were driving on the highway, and I needed to pee. So we pulled over, and I jumped out at this cafe, and they had these wooden display cabinets, extraordinarily beautiful. I've only just remembered that now. And inside them were all of these little black dollies, and I bought three. Both with little pigtails. A red one, a green one, a yellow one, and I kept them in my studio for 8 months. I think they're next door right now. But I kept them, I brought them home, and when it came to working out what was going to hang on this textile piece of cloth, woven print, I wasn't sure what it was. I mean, like I was saying, I'm negotiating a lot of chintz also, a lot of like William Morris references. And it was a case of smashing all of those together, or like whacking them in the pot, giving them a bit of a mix, shaking them around a bit. And I feel like the little girls, I was working again at like a real distance, just like with the nails, just like with the Queen. And then when it came to the last minute, to finishing off the textile, I was hand embroidering them, and I was looking at them closer and closer. And I realized it's just me and my sister. Nancy's on the top, I'm on the bottom. And again, it's been extraordinary. It's like I'm completely unable to be this vulnerable at home. And through the process of being so far away and making in this frenzy in a lockdown, making in complete isolation, everything that's in the nooks and crannies of your brain, I feel, just starts coming out. I don't know if you guys had that, but every little thing I think I thought I'd forgotten about, tried to paste over with collage, with funky edits, with crazy haircuts, like everything just came to the top like oil and water. And I feel like this project's residue, it's inconclusive. Like it's the residue of that process, stripping back, looking at new things, recognizing yourself, seeing yourself, making it anyway. Yeah, revealing things even to myself that I didn't even know was still there.
But I mean, for sure you can, I mean, you know, it's also been quite a different process. It's been 8 months of quarantine, of lockdown. It's not like any other experience that the rest of the world has had. It's a very unique way of getting to know yourself, you know? And I think I mean, the works are definitely, you know, things that obviously you've been talking about in variation of different ways, but all of those layers are just so massively like intertwining and like fun at the same time, you know.
Yeah, completely.
It's not like there's loads of these like super heavy deep topics, but it's also beautiful to look at, you know. It's also joyful to look at. You want to interact, you want to play, you want to dance, all of these things at the same time.
Don't we all? It's the heaviest fucking year of so many of our lives. I can't come out and bring more doom and gloom. How self-involved. You know, make that floor Britney blue. Remind me of a time in my life when everything was expanding. Yes, I'm sure it was all wrong, and now I definitely want to revise it, but give me something that's expanding in a warm human way, that's inviting, that's joyful, that maybe puts, you know, like a pair of brand new patent leather shoes. Like, there's something great about shine. The stainless steel poles, like even helmet cutout on the left, which is the digital collage hung to the left of the standard, it's shiny, it's effervescent, it's kind of all the things I always want to try and get towards, but then end up, I don't know, chipping my...
But I mean, even like, for example, the poles that hold together the tapestry, you know, you have the shiny black going onto the shiny pink. That too also.
Lacquered, car paint, fresh, fast and furious.
Oh, for sure. Why the vinyl floor? Why was that important?
Britney Spears. I can't quite explain it. I should probably be more ashamed to admit that. It just came straight out. I knew it immediately. But I guess, I don't know.
Which era Britney?
Oh, first to second album.
Okay. So
this is pre-breakdown Britney. This is Britney before we knew the difficult truth. I'm still a fan. I still follow her. I'm double tapping on that social media. Yeah, but also negotiating my childhood. Like, I turned like 30 in Peru. Well, not in Peru, but around the time, basically around the time I moved here. People used to talk to me about Saturn returns. It's like these 3 years apparently running up to your 30th birthday where the stars on the same part. I mean, mumbo jumbo. But I found myself going back to that moment of like late 90s multicultural Britain. Like, that's my life, 0 to 10. That's what I lived through. Britpop, YBAs, Spice Girls, Missy Elliott. I mean, that's not British, but that was the time, that kind of like swanky, amazing aesthetic, explosive. I'm thinking really now, 20 years later, what remains? What remains as a mixed race British person? I'm not sure. I don't know if I want to participate anymore. I'd rather just take a step back and have a think, because I'm not sure.
I mean, there's also, for example, all of the political uproar that the last year has brought up, and you can see that happening, you know, within Europe, within the US, and also with Peru. And, you know, I mean, there's definite parallels between Brexit and what has happened now in Peru. You know, and you have to also, like, they're not being heard. Really having that time to reflect that, and I want to have my voice heard. And I think that's why I think that the Queen that you have in your installation is of particular importance.
Yeah.
To actually have that visual.
Yeah, completely. I guess one of the really important things to say is we've been in such a strict lockdown here, so we still have curfew. I would say for 6 months we had full weekend city freezes, so you would be able to leave the house in the week to get your fruit and vegetables. I mean, it was bonkers. There was a couple of weeks where they split the days up by gender. You know, it was one day for a man, another day for a woman. It really, really wild. Particularly for London, I don't think there's rules in London the same way, or maybe people just don't care about them. Maybe they're not scared of the police. It's a whole other thing. But we started working on this the week that the political coup, literally manufacturing it, hit in Lima. So with us, I had a Zoom meeting and she said, "Oh my God, have you seen what's happened in Congress?" And I said, "No, I've just been like knee deep in PDFs and like paint colors." She said, we've got to have a chat about it. And so the backdrop of the construction of what you see in front of you is chaos. And chaos means different things in different parts of the world, which is something me and Claudia talked about. She kind of had to coach me through that, a few extremely tough moments, which I'm not very proud of. It was extraordinary. I feel like Claudia, you should jump in and...
Yeah, I just like to give a little bit of backdrop. So our Congress illegally removed a president that wasn't really loved because, of course, there's a corruption scandal which has marred Peru for the last, I think, our last 5 presidents are either in jail or about to be thrown in jail. So, but this guy, regardless of what we think, was illegally vacated. Here it's called vacancia. And so the people erupted because we've been, for people that are familiar with Latin American politics, there's the whole Lava Jato thing that started in Brazil and has expanded through the whole of Latin America, and Odebrecht, that has really hit Peru very hard because it has unveiled layers and layers of corruption that go really, really deeply. And I think because of the strict lockdown that Lotte was explaining, we not only got a lockdown, but a state of emergency where human rights are suspended in Peru. So the police get a level of control over the citizens, and a level of violence is allowed during this time that would not be allowed normally. So I think people were really, I think in general, it affected everybody's mental health and tolerance, and there was so much violence. And so when we saw this political situation just erupt in a way, especially like the younger generation, I would say 35 and under, they just took to the streets and everybody was out, just giving a very loud message that this government did not represent Peruvians. And what was a peaceful protest became a war zone. The police started throwing gas bombs at young people that were unarmed. There were no sticks, no stones, just cardboard and chants and people singing the national anthem. And they were shooting, like they said there were no bullets, but they were shooting like little plastic balls. But if you shoot that and it hits somebody in the eye, they can kill. And at the end of the protest, 2 young students were murdered by the police. And there were about 40 young students also that disappeared for 2 or 3 days. And there was such a massive mobilization of, we have to find these people, that they were eventually all released. But there were 150, again, young students injured. One of them will not be able to walk, one lost an eye. And I keep saying peaceful protesters because that's what it was. It was young people, a younger generation getting involved in politics and saying, this has to stop. And so this is when Lotte was, of course, manufacturing the whole project. And it was a really weird week because everybody had to stop work. So we were working at the gallery, and then at 5 p.m., close the door, go protest. and then go protest in a place where you're not safe, and you know you're not safe, but you can't stay home because that would be like just giving up, and then come to work the next day and then go protest again, and seeing the news and seeing the violence, and then seeing that the news were not covering the things as they should. So you were getting all your news from Instagram, from TikTok, from young people just like sending WhatsApps and like, this is happening. So it was a very, very hard time for everybody. And just like Lotte said, she really worked in collaboration with a lot of people, a lot of Peruvians. And I think she was incredibly, like, she had a lot of empathy to the moment that we as Peruvians were experiencing, and the pain and the injustice, and just like the uncertainty. We didn't know what would happen.
Well, I was seeing it also through the eyes of Mafe, who works with us at the gallery, who fits that exact profile. Mid-20s, galvanized by protests in Chile, the BLM movement, having been catalyzed by watching this in isolation for 8 months, and feeling also, I think the important thing to mention about the generational element is she falls into, I would say, the generation that didn't experience the terrorism as strongly of the 80s and 90s in Peru. So they're a group of people who were charged in a different way, in the sense that they might have less fear than someone older. She would get up, she would be in the center of Lima protesting with friends, colleagues, collaborators, other artists at the gallery, building this community, and then be straight at the workshop at 10 a.m. to meet me and Alons, and essentially drip feeding news. I mean, and it was an extraordinary experience. I left the UK disgusted, horrified, with all my own bullshit, about race, class, gender. And then I came to Peru, and then I had to really stare in the mirror. Yes, I'm a woman. Yes, I'm mixed race. But I am British. I am British. I hold that passport. I hold that cultural identity. And I feel like the things that happen in Peru, I feel like it's just too short to say this is just Peru's fault. I feel like these things that are happening, they feel like stagnant waste, like things that are kind of in the cracks in between. They're the ripples of colonialism. They're the ripples of a country developing past oppression, developing through its past oppression, and showing up now and saying, this is what Peru can be. And seeing that carried by Mafe and her generation, her friends, and everyone. I mean, me and Alons, we visited the protests in Miraflores, because what happened is there were protests that were organized across the country within, very, very short matter of hours, in Ayacucho, in Arequipa, in all different districts of the city. Simultaneously, once the protests started getting underway, when the news broke about the heartbreaking news broke about the young men, vigils are simultaneously also happening. And so what you had was this city that really had been, as Claudia's saying, under such an extraordinary police state in lockdown, ripping and tearing through all of this, through this extraordinary man plonking himself where he shouldn't have been. I still believe is completely illegal, standing up and saying, this is not what we will tolerate. And this is not what we will tolerate for our future. This is not what we want anymore. The extraordinary bravery, the stories that she would tell of being tear gassed, running, it's just hard to talk about because it's really emotional. And then going back to work the next day. I'm used to going into workshops, and it's great, there's always a great vibe. Everyone's working with their hands. That's very physical. Whether it's print, whether it's metal, whether it's wood, whatever, even nail tech. No one was listening to music. There was this extraordinary tense feeling. Everyone was so emotionally charged. All that was being played was the news, and then what would happen is, as the news was updated, these kind of hushed conversations would start occurring as the news would move like Chinese whispers through the workshop of who had been fired, who was moving into power. We were sat in the back room listening to the next door neighbors, which was a plastic printer. They had turned the volume up the loudest when they were re-voting. They were doing the vote of no confidence or in Congress. I think, was it a vote? What was it, Claudia? It was on the Friday. I think, it was when they were voting for maybe for or against. But
well, they first kicked the guy out, and then the president. They once they made the decision to vacate Vizcarra, they declared him morally incapacitated, which is something that nobody really understands, because constitutionally it's like one of those like broad definitions, and of course we're not going to specify what it means. They just said that like last week, which was super sad. So after that, Merino was named president, which sparked the protests.
Yeah.
After the murdered, he had to renounce because people were going to burn up the city.
They were going to smash up the city. We'd be driving from to Miraflores to Surco, back down San Isidro, and the city was just full of riot police, giant guns, the whole blacked out visor, and it's kind of just it psychologically impacts you. It's a state of fear. But again, the Peruvian spirit, extraordinary. We worked every day. We held each other. We cried. We tried to make jokes. We made sure we had, loads of food. People, it's these extraordinary things. Like when it's, I feel like you always think chaos is gonna like feel. I don't know, not chaos. Like emergencies are gonna feel different than they really are. But it's really simple things.
Safe space together.
Exactly.
But the days after, because this was solved on a Monday, I remember talking to Mafe again at the gallery on Tuesday, and we were saying, I think like I have PTSD because everything just happened so fast that once it was over and the new president got elected, everybody was just like, we were staring at each other, not being able to understand what, like we don't know what just happened here. Yeah.
But that was what was extraordinary about what happened, is something changed very quickly. Yeah. And that, I think, was I think that's the thing that people should really hold on to abroad, looking at what happened here. People here affected change. They mobilized swiftly, efficiently, and quickly, and they did move out what they wanted. Things are still unresolved. We're 4 weeks since this, 4 or 5 weeks since this all began. And like we all know, the dust takes sometimes years, sometimes decades to settle. But I think holding on to that was extraordinary, and witnessing that. I'm part of the generation of people. Not I'm part of it, but I lived through the Iraq March. I don't know how many million people went to that march through central London, and we still went straight in. The government did nothing. They did not care. So
Trump did not win by votes. He didn't win the popular vote. So, but he still managed to run and affect the whole world for those 4 years.
But here I think what Lotte said is very important. Like, I take that as well as the experience of everything. It's the swiftness and the like change really happened, and we felt it happen. Like. A real, like there's definite like before and after in terms of even as a population as what we believe can be achieved if we show up.
Absolutely, it's the psychology of protest. I remember reading an extraordinary piece of writing about the Iraq March and what that did to the British population. They just realised very quickly that the government didn't care what they thought. And I think that we managed to change it around here quickly enough is something that, yeah, people should really look at as an incredible
and also like there was space for joy. I think the booth is a reflection of that, of
space for joy, exactly.
Or something, but a lot of the protests had music, had singing, and even the memorials. There were flowers and candles and hope, and just like I seeing the nail piece for me as a Peruvian, I just like the color and the rhythm and just like the happiness, which is my country. We go through this. I think Peruvians, have an extraordinary resilience, and we keep this happy spirit, throughout everything. And I think in a way, another artist, because at the gallery we have the pleasure of working with a lot of artists from around the world. I think that what Lotte did was extraordinary, because a lot of people would have changed the booth and make it dark and just because the whole situation was dark and difficult. And I think she connected, again, she was very good at empathizing with the movement and the people, and especially the young generation, because there was a lot of happiness in a terrible moment. And I think that booth reflects that really well.
They were inspiring. They were so inspiring. There was absolutely no apathy there. It was everyone showed up. Correct.
I mean, that's definitely something that you're very good at, Lotte, getting people together and bringing joy, for sure, definitely. Creating a joyous space, and yeah, for sure, creating a safe space where you actually want to see that happiness, you actually want to share in that happiness.
I don't know what to say. Yeah, thank you. I hope so. I feel like that's not something I can say. Yeah, I think that's something you've got to say.
It's definitely something that you do with your work.
I'm going to send you the video of the guy dancing so you can look at it every time you need.
It's been, I mean, to be honest, like seeing that whole process, like I said, like seeing it from the renders through that, continual dialogue that we've had, and like when I got the photos of the finished exhibition, I was just like, oh my God, like I want more. It was just like, again, like when I saw that cabinet, I was like, oh my God, every single nail. They are little, memento, they're little portraits of you, basically.
Take your work seriously. Don't take yourself too seriously. Yeah, it's just, we've got to ease up, man.
Yeah,
we got to be softer. We got to love each other a bit more, at the risk of sounding like, I don't know, a hippie. I am so grateful to the gallery, indebted to my time in Peru, the extraordinary person that kind of led me to Peru. There's no way I could have come up with this. There's no way I could have seen things in such plain sight. There's no way I could have moved past my own bullshit. And for that, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. So thank you for chatting today. This was really fun.
Yeah, thank you to both of you. And thank you, Lotte, for allowing us to show amazing work. Anyways, thank you, guys.
All right, thanks.